Welcome. So as most of you just heard, we're waiting for people to be getting the corrected link. So hopefully people will continue to join as we begin. But for all of you who came on correctly the first time and have been waiting, we want to respect your time and get started. But so welcome to our second Opyrus Writer Conversation. This is an exciting new series that we began last month. And what we're doing with this, each month we're going to have a different author of a different genre, sometimes overlapping, wide array. And the goal of these is to give people the opportunity to hear from published authors, their experiences, their expertise, their insight, their guidance, to ask questions. So I'll explain to you in a minute how we're going to be actually doing the layout of this call, and then to really just get a chance to hear firsthand from these writers. And first of all, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Sara Crispe, and I am the Chief Content Creator of Opyrus. And I'm going to be introducing in a moment both Mr. Arthur Gutsch, who's the CEO of Opyrus, who will say a few words in a moment, and our guest speaker, Dr. Tim Morrison. But just want to quickly let you know, if you are new to Opyrus, so Opyrus is a self-betterment platform, and our belief is that each and every person is a writer, whether or not they know it yet, and that writing is really a conduit. It's really a means to well-being, and that is physical and emotional, psychological, and financial well-being. And that is what we are trying to promote, to get everybody writing and to use it as a tool to better their lives. And the Writer Conversation series is being able to see how different people have done that in different ways. So, you know, it's an exciting new opportunity. And the way we do these is that it begins with the interview portion, where I ask questions to our guest speaker. And then we open it up to your questions or comments, whatever you want. So the way we'll be doing that, since you're all muted, is that you'll see your little chat box. Feel free at any point actually to send your questions in the chat. We just may not get to them until that portion of the call. So before I introduce Tim, Art, would you like to jump on and—
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Absolutely. So it's great to have everyone here. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday evening. It's great to be here. And Tim, Dr. Morrison and I have been talking for a number of years, and we've been, communicating back and forth, not only about what I would call, more traditional publishing of books, but how writing can help people in their lives. And one of the things about Tim that struck me was that his experiences basically range the gamut. And not only is he what I would call an expert book shepherd in helping people write their books, but he's also got a keen sense, since the very early days, of using writing to as a way to create well-being. So a very early pioneer in that type of process. And as Sarah and Tim talk, you see more of that coming through. So thank you, Tim, for joining us. It's great that we finally have an opportunity to work together. I know we're going to be doing a lot of interesting things as we go forward. So also, I just wanted to do a quick shout out for our WeFunder financing that we're doing. We're raising capital, and it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. And the company at wefunder.com/Opyrus, we've raised about $140,000 to develop our new application called Write by Numbers, which is really exciting. So if you want to check that out, please do. Our profiles at wefunder.com/Opyrus. And that's something that we're really excited about. And we're looking forward to working with more people like Tim. And we're very thankful that we've got someone like Sara, who's also kind of heading up the content area and really spearheading some of these really cool initiatives we've got going. So with that, I'm not going to say anything more. Thanks, Tim, Sarah. You guys can go for it. And again, thanks everyone for being here tonight. Take care.
Okay, excellent. So I'm now going to introduce Dr. Tim Morrison, who we're really, really excited to have as our second guest author for the Opyrus writing series. And Tim's really a very fascinating person. I'm going to read you so I don't miss out on any of the things I have written down here. As Art just mentioned, his background, his talents, his life experiences span quite a range. He's a published author of 7 books. He's an ordained minister who worked as an education specialist in Ghana, West Africa. He is a doctor of naturopathy. He hosted a weekly internet radio show called Right Here, Right Now, and that is WRITE. So you can get that cute little pun, I guess, right here, right now. And he, in that series, actually one of the books I'm going to be referencing tonight, the Write a Book, Change a World, is the book that is the write-up of those different interviews where he interviewed leaders in various businesses about their writing journeys. And he's also worked for years as a writing coach for his company, Right Choice Services, to help others discover their unique story and create something everlasting for themselves and for the world. So as you'll see in our discussion, Tim has always used writing as a tool for wellness, both in his personal life, with his clients, with the various people he's been interacting and working with, as a means to better understand himself and the world around him, to better connect, be it with his children. He has a book, Letters to My Sons, right, which is more on the personal narrative genre. And he's a big believer, like Opyrus, which is why we connected so well when we spoke about this, that everybody is truly a writer in potential, and that we just need to be able to tap into that ability, because we all have a unique story that only we can share, and that we really owe it to ourselves and to the world to share it. So Tim, thank you for joining us tonight. I also want to thank Tim. All of you should have received, even though the link to this call may have been incorrect, the download link was correct in the emails you should have received today. You actually got about 4 emails from us today, because there was one this morning, one later today, reminding you about this call, also with the download for his book, Basic Writing Tips for Emerging Writers, a manual to help you focus and to improve your writing from the start. If for any reason you didn't get that, reach out to me. I'll make sure you get that download link. And he also has very generously offered to do a free 45-minute consultation with the first 20 people who sign up for our Opyrus professional package. So it basically pays for itself. And it's a wonderful opportunity to get guidance with whatever writing project you may have already started, or maybe thinking to start, or may not even know you want to start, but Tim will help convince you that you do. So that is also something, we still have some slots left for that. So to begin, Tim, I want to ask you, I think that every writer makes that leap at some point where they shift from someone who writes to being able to call themselves a writer, which is kind of a huge leap, and I think a bit of a scary leap. And something usually happens where that shift is able to be made, like, wow, I'm a writer. So I'm curious to know when in your writing journey that happened for you, where you felt that you were now a writer.
That might have happened at 3 o'clock this afternoon when I read your email. I said, oh, okay, here we go. But it did trigger some serious thought for me. As you know, others will now learn, I spent 25 years in parish ministry, so I was writing an essay a week, so to speak, better known as a sermon. And I had crafted a particular kind that I would do infrequently, but they were monologues that I became, I was the character giving an eyewitness report. And about the third time I did this in one congregation, I heard the choir was seated behind me, and I heard several of the choir members go, "Oh boy, I must be doing something right here," seriously. And that interlude just kind of said to me, I've got something going, and that's when I began to realize maybe I can write. It was when I wrote Letters to My Sons, which was my second book, and my boys.
After your first book, you weren't yet a writer, not until your second book.
I didn't feel it. That was a dissertation for my naturopathy degree. And somebody, I've written academic papers. This was my second doctorate, hey. So really when I wrote Letters to My Sons, and the response I got from people, my sons' friends wanted it. Their parents wanted it. My relatives wanted it. People I saw in business wanted it. And I realized that they wanted it because it spoke to them, or they believed it would. And that's when I said, dang, I can write. And it doesn't have to be on a Sunday morning either.
Yeah.
No, that's the honest answer. That's when it said I could do this.
And it's just interesting how you just mentioned when you wrote something that was very personal for your children, right? Where
Yes.
you knew, so to speak, your audience, and yet it resonated with so many other people. That's when the shift took place. And I think that's actually a really powerful way of saying it. When we realize that our writing impacts other people, when our words resonate, when other people are connecting to it, then it's no longer just writing for ourselves, but writing for others. And that might be actually the shift between one who writes and one who is a writer.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
a really interesting process. So if you could give yourself a piece of advice to your younger writing self, what would it be?
Find that balance between the head and the heart. So much of my early writing, and in fact, a lot of my clients, they're writing, and it's all coming out of here. And it doesn't sound scholarly, but it doesn't have any warmth to it. And so when I finally realized it was okay to bring some heart into this, bring some feeling or emotion, that's when I realized that my writing began to speak to other people. And I just needed to do more of that. And so I really keep an eye on that when I write now.
That both the heart and the head are engaged. Yeah.
Well, curiously enough, if you know the chakras, and there are 7 chakras, this is metaphysics, this is energy work. You've got the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And what I imagine, third eye is like the head, and you've got the heart. So your throat chakra is the midpoint between those two, and that's where you want your voice coming from when you write. Bringing that heart energy with the third eye energy into your throat, coming out into the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's very aligned with what you were just saying, that when there's that emotional connection, when somebody feels that you are speaking to them as well. And I think that's one of the powerful things, about writing. I know for myself, what's amazing about writing is people will connect to a part of me that I don't even necessarily connect to anymore, but it's still so relevant to them. And that power of being able, that when we write something, it's speaking to someone else. So it's so much bigger than ourselves. Even if it's our own story, when it's something in our past, it's always present to the reader. It's always new and it's always fresh. And that idea of having the emotional connection. And that's actually my next question is exactly that your books really range. I mean, you have very practical writing guidance. If it's the basic tips for writers, I've got the one here, about writing secrets, essential steps to discover how to start. You're very practical in your writing guidance. You're very straightforward. You're very clear. It's actually very head oriented in a sense, even though it's tapping into bringing the heart in the writer. But I'm curious for you as a writer, which one it's harder for you because you also have the genres where you get very personal, you get very vulnerable. So of the different genres you do, ranging from practical guidance to, let's say, personal narrative, which one is more challenging for you? I read somewhere that one of your books you managed to do in 48 hours, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But which one's more challenging? Which one's more rewarding with that range? What do you like more?
That's like asking me which of my two sons do I like better.
Depends on the day. No.
Okay. And the answer is I love them both. You know, each has its purpose. And it's easy for me to go into the exacting kind of writing, intellectual all head stuff, because I've done so much of that in my life. But it's also challenging because you got to get your stuff right. And, you know, like when I wrote Healing Plants, this was a new field for me. And I was going into aromatherapy, essential oils and all that. And I mean, I was new. My ears were still wet, you know? So I made sure that I had sources, 3 separate sources to back up everything I said. And enjoying research, that was fun. But then when I began to look at it, I said, well, that's kind of cool, isn't it? So it starts off heady, but I got into it. When I was writing Secrets, my editor came back at me and said, you know, you have to believe in yourself. You're quoting too many people. Well, I was quoting people to say, I know what I'm talking about. And she said, no, talk from your heart. So that's when that shift began. And then, of course, when I wrote Letters to My Sons and some of the other stuff, it's just, well, it's your target market, Sarah. You have to, and my boys were 12 and 16 when I began the book. So I couldn't use big words. And so I had to write from the heart. So it really comes down, who's my target market? What am I trying to accomplish? And then my mind and my heart and my whole being just knows how to respond.
You made a comment in one of the books of yours that I was reading that we're all experts, obviously, in our own lives. So
Exactly.
right, when you're doing certain types of writing, you definitely need your footnotes and you need your sources and you better have your facts and your statistics and everything backing it up.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I think that actually is very intimidating to a lot of people, and they avoid writing because they feel maybe I'm not an expert. But you had that line and that reminder that we are all experts of our lives. And what we know uniquely. And so when you're talking from the heart, you are your source. You are the best source there is.
Yes.
And that's
absolutely right. That's something I deal with my clients a lot on. You know what you're doing or you wouldn't be writing. You're the expert. Even if you're writing your life story, well, even if, then you really are the expert on that one.
Right. And now something we're actually going to be posting soon on Opyrus for all of you in our new podcast series that we're going to be putting out. We actually have some great podcasts from Tim on journaling, which not all writers do actually. And it's interesting because I know from our discussions, you seem to have you were always a writer in the sense that you always journaled and you always wrote for yourself. And so I want to ask you about that because I know you're also a very big advocate of people journaling. Can you explain how your journaling has helped you develop both as a person and as a writer?
It took a few years for me, maybe even a decade, to begin to realize that possibility out of journaling. I was just journaling to journal and having fun with it. And then I hit a rough spot in my life, and I have no trouble ever saying help. And so I was working with a counselor, a therapist, and she asked me, do you journal? I said, well, yeah. And she said, take a few, leaf through it, see what you find. And so when I began to do that, I saw patterns. And I mean, I had been writing, journaling for 10, 15 years at that point, maybe even 20. And I had never taken the time to really study what was going on in there. And I began to see there were patterns and there were cycles. And it was like every 3 years in July, I would go into a funk. And so she and I sat there and said, okay, this is 1997. That means probably the year 2000. And you can go, you know, and that's helpful. There were other things that I wrote that I forgot about, feelings that I had that I allowed myself to put down and just forgot about them, went back and saw them when I read them. So, oh, wow, I was vulnerable there and I didn't die. That was insights to myself. That has been very helpful.
Yeah, because when you write it down, I imagine in a journal, a lot of it are the facts, and then reflecting back and tapping into the feelings surrounding those and the growth. And it's actually one of the things we're really promoting with Opyrus, Write for Life idea, that when you write throughout your life, it becomes, you know, almost this proof of growth and development and transformation. And exactly that, I think we all underestimate ourselves and we don't see our own change. And when you have it in writing, you know, and you know, that's a beautiful thing. I wish I used to journal all the time. I was so good about it when I was a kid, and then I got lazy, and I'm jealous hearing that. But I'm also curious, do you find it easier to journal when things are challenging or when things are going well? And along with that, just to add on the next question, really, how do you get yourself writing and journaling when you do not want to be? When you just are not feeling it, not motivated? Do you push yourself to do it? Do you give yourself those breaks? Or do you, you know, just kind of force it out?
The curious thing about is that when's the toughest or the easiest to journal? When things are ugly in one's life, there's a lot to write about. But that doesn't necessarily mean I want to write about it.
Right.
Okay. And then when things are going good, hey, why do I need to write? I know things are going good, but it's a both and. Writing when things are not, and you know, I can attest to this by showing you what I didn't write, okay? Because I know what I didn't write on that particular day. Curiously enough, when I go to whatever that day would be, there's enough in there that I can remember, and it triggers what I didn't put in there, so I don't escape it. Sometimes when things are going really well, that's when I get a little sloppy in journaling, because I don't want to say, I got up this morning, I fed the cats, went for a walk, that kind of thing. That's the challenge really in journaling, is it's not a diary. It's a sharing of thoughts and feelings and what, you know, what's going on. I think I know in one of those audios that I made for you guys on journaling, commented that I don't journal. Right now I'm on a swing of, I've journaled every day for about 3 months, which means probably in another month I'm going to miss 4 or 5 days. And there have been times when I've missed weeks, and there has been a time when I missed 2 years. And I don't beat myself up about that. Yeah, it was interesting. I read Michelle Obama's book, and she talks in there about the power of journaling in her life. And she also said that she doesn't journal every day, and there have been times when she's gone years without journaling, but she always knew she would get back to it. And that's the thing that I've held, and I knew I'd always get back to it, and I always have. So don't beat yourself up when you miss a day, 2, 3, several weeks, a month, or a year. Just get back to it.
And you also hold on to all of your journals, so you have many.
Yes, I do. You know, and I don't know if I told you this or not, but about 3 weeks ago, I got them all out and lined them up. I have 38 journals.
Wow. Do you journal for a specific amount of time, or just however long it feels right?
Whatever happens. There was a span of time in there when I was doing the totally blanking on the lady's name who had a book out on it, but she encouraged to do morning pages, and that meant 2 pages. So I did that for quite a long time, and what she talked about is just keep the pen going, and if you can't think of anything, just can't think of what to write, can't think of what to write, or write your grocery list or whatever. And I would do that. Obviously, I haven't kept it up. Sometimes they're short, sometimes they're long. It's whatever the spirit moves. It just I don't want to confine myself to, oh my God, if I don't do this. And I think that's what keeps people from journaling. I've got to what? And I've got to do all this and I've got to do. No, you don't. No, you do not.
I actually just wrote a blog that's on Opyrus about why you should write for only 10 minutes a day. And that idea of sometimes limiting yourself and, you know, keeping it to something a very specific, short, doable amount of time. If it's answering a writing prompt or doing a gratitude, you know, type of morning exercise or evening exercise, but limiting it, that better you should want to write more than to burn yourself out and then want to write less. And like anything, you know, that once you get into the groove and once you create it as part of the routine, that ideally it will become something that you can continue with without the pressure for the days you miss. But with that, so I wanted to shift. Actually, I found your book, The Write a Book Changed the World, the interviews, to be fascinating. Because yeah, no, that was excellent. That was from the Right Here, Right Now radio show, the internet radio show that I had mentioned in Tim's introduction. But what this really was is a collection of different experts in their fields, a wide range of businesses and fields, and how all of these supposedly non-writers all wrote, and how the act of writing impacted their lives, others' lives, and also really benefited them in their business and their communication and their financial success, which is all part of that whole wellness idea, that writing is something that is going to impact all aspects of your life. So you had here so one of the things you spoke about, I actually had a quote here that we already spoke about, but that really struck me, where you said, I'm going to teach you to write not with your head, but to write with your heart. And you explained that, but you had another line in there, and I actually think I still have it marked, which I thought was very interesting, which was, that somebody that you were working with said, I know the title of my book, and I know what I'm going to write about. And your immediate reaction, and you said, although you did not say it, was, oh, you've just shut out all kinds of possibilities. So I'd like you to expand on that, because I feel that people feel this pressure. I need to know from the get-go what I'm going to be writing about, what I'm going to be saying, what I'm going to be covering, what my table of contents is going to look like. And it seems like you were giving the advice, don't limit your possibilities when you begin the writing process. So if you could expand, please.
Yeah, I think put it even in a greater context is, I've been known to say, when a client or somebody comes to me and says, I already know the title of my book, I go, oh man, because that's when you've really shut out possibilities, really shut it out. It's good to have these ideas. It's good to have topics. It's good to have all of these things you think you want to write about, but you got to bring the heart into it. You really have to bring the heart into it. You know, the Velveteen Rabbit, how many, you know, all of us have read that sometime or other. We probably read it to our kids, or we've all had our own Velveteen Rabbit. And it manifested love because it kept getting used. It was a heart thing. It wasn't a head thing. And you've got to bring your heart, your feelings. Why do you believe what you believe? Why are you writing this? Why is it so important? It may be factual, and you can give me data out my eardrums, but why is it important? Help me understand why it's important. Show me your passion. And when you do that, you begin to hook the reader.
Could you share an example? Because then after this, I want to shift into the other type of writing you worked with, but an example of somebody who you really saw writing absolutely change their business, change, I mean, you have so many great examples in the book, but somebody that you would say stood out to you
Yeah,
as
yeah.
transformation?
I've told this story many times, and it's just we laugh about it when we get together. Her name is Michelle Stevens, and she contacted me and she said, Dr. Tim, I've written a book. It's called Unmasking. I bare my soul. There's blood all over the manuscript. I want you to read it and critique it. And I read it, and she had worked on it for 2 years. I read it, and my critique began, I didn't find any blood anywhere.
Mm.
And can you believe she was really upset? And it took her 2 months to get back to me. And then she said, I left out my heart, didn't I? And I said, yes, you did. So she rewrote it, and she allowed her heart to come in. She allowed herself, instead of being in third person, this is what happened to me.
Mm.
And it was so powerful that her church backed her in getting the book out there. And now she leads workshops for women.
Hmm.
How to express yourself and how to get out of bad situations. And she and I have done writing workshops together. And she always introduces me by starting with that story. He told me he couldn't find any blood in my manuscript. But that's what happens when you put your heart, when you allow your heart to get in there and you really tell, this is what happened to me. She was molested by a church elder, and she reported on it. She didn't tell the story, she reported on it. And once she told the story, all kinds of things came out. It's powerful.
Wow. So that actually does shift into the next type of writing, which you've been very involved with in terms of working with patients, with hospice, with your different work with people going through physical illness and even the dying process. And I want to ask you, I know you have done, one of the first things I read of yours was your pamphlet on writing one's way to better well-being, which was the perfect thing when I was discussing how that is Opyrus's mission. And you said, well, I have a whole pamphlet I put together on this, but I'd like you to share how you've seen when you were getting patients who were either dealing with their very close loved ones who were going through cancer or dying, or they themselves, how you saw some examples where writing helped them heal, either emotionally, sometimes even physically, but where you saw writing as this therapeutic tool that you were able to help them use.
My thoughts came out of what I was feeling as naturopathic counselor, because all of my patients either had a chronic disease or had cancer. And I wanted them to have a sense of hope. And oftentimes when you're in that kind of a framework, you think you've lost all control.
Mm.
Doctors told me when I have to take my medication, this is what I've got to do. So I began by asking them, what do you have control over? Just write about that. And it may be stupid little things. You get to control when you turn your pillow over or not, but just what do you have control over? And in the midst of all this ugliness and medication, what have you, what made you smile today? It may have been all of a nanosecond, if you will, but you smiled. Who was the last person you said, I love you, to? Who was the last person to say to you, I love you? And write about those things. And what happens is it helps people to see, well, in the midst of what I thought was chaos, there is order, and by golly, I do have control of some things. and I still can love. And there are still some good things. But also with that, okay, what wasn't so good today, and let it all out, because nobody's going to say, oh, it can't be all that bad, when you damn well it's that bad, if not even worse. And so it gave people, it gave my patients, it gave clients, and it gives anybody freedom to really investigate their feelings and get it out there and know that it's okay.
Beautiful. Yeah. And then to reflect back, because we often forget how we were feeling, either how low or how high. So it can remind us of how bad things were and how far we've come, or how good we're capable of feeling, and inspire us to get back there. So that's very powerful. I want to open it up. I want to ask you one last question right now, so we can open it up to questions that other people may have. I'm actually going to ask you two things, but my second to last question is, do you have any plans on publishing any other books that you may be working on or thinking to work on for the future?
Yes. Okay. As you know, I've been working on something called 49 short articles on writing your someday book, and that's with you guys to figure out what you want to do with it. Well, I'm working on a parallel one called 29 short articles for the executive, the entrepreneur, the business person to write a book. Because it's a different group, and if you one of the interviews in that Write a Book, Change the World is with Tom Fulton and blanking on the other guy, don't we all? Reeves is his last name. And they both lead business groups, and they both say, they tell everybody to write a book, and the answer always is, but where do I find the time as an executive? I'm going to help them find that time. And I have, ever since Letters came out, I've been wanting to write Letters 2. And it's been in my head for, I'll bet for 10 years now. But I know it can't be the way Letters 1 was. So I'm playing with that. So, and I'm also working on a manuscript of journaling for healthcare workers. So.
That will be especially important,
yes.
right? Actually, and we can say you were one of our contributing authors in the Corona Silver Linings anthology, which was also that idea of finding the positive, meaningful lesson in that thought capsule, of the global pandemic that we had all gone through.
Yes.
So for anybody not familiar with that, we have a great piece from Tim in that as well. I actually have the book right here.
Oh, imagine that.
No, but well, funny enough, it's under so many other things. I just nearly sent an entire.
Oh.
But so this is when I started actually with Opyrus. This is our nonprofit division, is the Life Right Project, and it's exactly what we've been speaking about, to be getting everybody to process, right, to find what they have control in a time where we didn't have control. And Tim actually has a beautiful piece in there related to his work in the hospitals and with patients, and through this process that, it's always very easy to find all the horrible things that came about through COVID, but to try to dig deep and find, how have I grown? How have I developed? How have maybe my relationships deepened or strengthened? And so it's a beautiful compilation, but it's very aligned with that idea, and reminded me when you said
it's a powerful book. I think I told you this, but I would plant this thought with all who are listening, watching, what have you, is I bought a copy of that and gave it to the night supervisors at the hospital where I used to be a chaplain. It was just my gift to them. And they collectively let me know how much it meant to them because of what you just said, Sarah. All of those in there, those who wrote, talked about, I got over it, or I got through this, or I this, that, or other. And they hungered to know that other people were successful in getting their heads above water, that other people, because they dealt with it as they administered this 633 bed hospital every night for 12 hours. So if you know somebody in the healthcare profession that has really struggled through this, get them a copy of Silver Linings.
Get them writing and journaling and processing. Okay, so I want to open this up now, really, for any questions that any of you have. The best would be to put them in the chat, and then I will read them to Tim and he can respond to them. I'm not sure if you are familiar and have read any of his books yet. If not, you'll definitely be seeing more of his material on Opyrus and have that opportunity. And if not, then I definitely have another question that we can, wrap up with, but let's give this a minute. Anybody? Okay, so, oh, yes, that's a great question. What is the best solution for writer's block? I was thinking this with the journaling, but when you're dealing with people who, let's say, are trying to get a book out, how do you guide people through that writer's block?
I write about this in my book, Writing Secrets, so there's a whole chapter of that. There's a story I love to refer to, and it's called The Story of Butt Glue. And it's in the Chicken Soup for the Writer's Soul. And the bottom line is you liberally apply glue to the seat of your desk chair and sit in it. Okay, that works for some. For me, that never worked. I needed to take a long, long walk and just let my mind go. Sometimes you walk away for 3 days or 5 days or a week, and then you come back. There's no one hard, fast answer that works for everyone. Just keep in mind, maybe it's butt glue, maybe it's the walk, maybe it's wait a day, 2, 3, or 4. Try them all. You may have to admit, butt glue may work today, and tomorrow you need to take a walk. Don't get yourself stuck in one way or another. Try them all. We all face it. We all get through it.
And along with that, I've got another question that says, I'm a writer that constantly needs motivation to complete my writing, but the funny thing is once I get writing, it's okay. And you mentioned something about that. So I think it's more of a comment really than a question, but that idea that sometimes just by writing, the act of writing gets you out of your block.
Yes.
It's triggering something I read in your book about just write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I use that phrase a lot when I'm teaching journaling and other stuff. Just write. Don't worry. Am I doing it right? Am I writing too fast? Am I writing too slow? Am I writing too much? Am I writing too little? Just write.
I think it also works with what we were saying about, even though it's a different context, but about head versus heart. Don't overthink it. If you're so consumed with, is this good and is this powerful and am I making my point, and you get too stuck in your own head about what you think, what everybody else thinks, it could actually paralyze you from writing. And just the writing gets it out, And then another question with that is it okay to use a pen and pencil, or should I move to the computer? I'm old school. So I just a little anecdote I can tell you. For me, that was one of the hardest things for me. Was I always wrote pen to paper, and I used to write everything down and then I'd have to retype it because I couldn't think on a computer screen. It took me a long time to transfer and be able to be creative on a computer screen. So I'm curious, do you journal pen to paper? Yes. Or okay?
I journal pen and paper. Now, every now and then, and I mentioned this in one of the audio tapes, that there comes a time when I sit down at the keyboard and I just type like crazy, and then I hit print, and then I tuck it into my journal. And those times don't happen very often, but there are those moments that I got to get this down, I got to get it down now, and I can't write that fast. People might think, hey, whatever, but whatever is important. For me, pen and paper. You know, even when I'm writing a book, pen and paper, in outline form, only then do I go to the computer and type it out.
Hmm.
I haven't tried, and I'm not going to try to shift my creative abilities from pen and paper to the keyboard. Too old for that. And I like the way I do it anyway.
I have one more technology question that just popped in, and then we will wrap up after that. But so the question is, I use voice to text to write. Am I missing anything? Is my heart getting translated?
You will find when you read it.
Hmm.
You will find when you read it. My gut says to me, probably when you're speaking it, you're more emotive because you're speaking it and you're letting your mind run free. But that's not necessarily the case because you may be so focused on sounding erudite and sounding like you know what you're doing that your heart gets blocked. So you read the manuscript, the transcript that comes out of it, and you'll be able to tell whether your heart's in there or not.
Or other people will be able to tell and to tell you.
That too.
It doesn't look bloodstained when Tim reads it. So one last question I just want to ask you, and then we'll wrap up with this. But do you have any just parting advice or words of guidance to encourage someone who has been hesitant to begin writing, to really tap in and reveal their hidden writer within?
I don't want to sound simplistic, but there's no erudite or intellectual, and just do it. Just write.
Well,
Just, you're not going to get bit. Nobody's going to see it unless you tell them to look at it. So you're safe. So just write. What helped me at the very beginning when I was thinking about being a writer was finding authors that I enjoyed. John James, who wrote the Bicentennial series. I loved his writing voice. I read so much of his, and I got that rhythm or that sound in it, and that helped me. There's a book out there called, well, we won't go into this long title, but writers should read. They just should read anything, just to see how people put words together and just to enjoy the structure and hands-on, self-involved learning. But trust yourself and just write.
It's so interesting you say that about reading, and just, we'll wrap up with this, but I think we're right now in a generation where people don't read. I mean, we're limiting ourselves to whatever it is, 140 characters in a tweet, right? That if you, I posted something more extensive on Facebook, and the people who shared it actually had to warn people, like, it might take you 90 seconds to read this, but it's worth it, right? Like, you had to read more because I couldn't fit it just on the screen. It's really true that one of the best ways to be inspired to write is by being inspired when we read. And that's a little antithetical to what's happening right now, but it's by pushing ourselves to read, it also really does awaken us to the beauty.
Isn't it curious, Sarah, that you and I are engaged in writing, and everybody that's on this tonight dream of writing, and yet we think about Twitter and texts and emails and keep it short and this and that, and that's writing.
It is writing, though, but that is actually the message. People are writing. They're constantly writing. So just use that and keep going with it, because everybody is communicating through writing, but they don't recognize it as writing. So that is actually one of the very messages we want to get across, that we're always writing. We're always using writing to relay our thoughts and feelings, what's going on in our innermost worlds, and to connect to other people, to feel heard, to feel understood, and to you know, create, especially with the isolation that's been going on, to create relationships. So with that, I just want to thank you. I want to really, if you haven't already downloaded the book that Tim sent, definitely do. That will give you some amazing guidance. We very specifically didn't go into the practical kind of guidance for writing, because you're going to have that. You're going to be able to access that through Opyrus. We're going to have a lot of Tim's material and guidance for that, along with all the other phenomenal resources we have for the actual practical part of writing. But the inspiration behind the writing, the power of the writing, the well-being connected to writing with really heart, mind, and soul, and all of the various aspects of ourselves. That's something that, you know, Tim beautifully demonstrates both in his writing and in his life. So Tim, thank you again for your time. The podcast will be coming up soon. All of you will be getting a copy of the video once we post it online. There will be the video and audio version in case you missed any of this, or for anybody who unfortunately is still seeking the correct link and didn't access it, they'll have that as well. But thank you all for joining us. It will also be sending you an email in the next week or so announcing our author that we'll be featuring for our third Opyrus Writer Conversation. So thank you all so much for joining. Thank you again, Dr. Tim Morrison. And we're excited to keep this series growing.